Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this session of Arctic Circle Virtual. The pandemic may be preventing us from meeting in the real world, but this session at least shows that the Arctic Circle is alive and kicking. Today's subject is the new strategy of Sweden on the Arctic. We are fortunate enough to have with us here today the Foreign Minister of Sweden, Linde, and she will grace us with participating in the debate here today. Sweden, of course, is a founding member of the Arctic Council, and it has a glorious past in Arctic research for a very, very long time. We shouldn't forget that it was a Swedish firm that was the first to navigate the elusive Northeastern Passage. And today, it is also Sweden that leads from the front, not least through the remarkable Arctic vessel Odin, that has undertaken 20 expeditions to the Arctic, and I think 9 that have reached the North Pole. The Arctic policy of Sweden that was originally accepted in 2011 and has been replaced by the new one that we are debating today, of course, was quite a good policy, but a lot has changed since 2011. For example, the Arctic has again assumed a new role in terms of geopolitics, and this is vividly reflected in the new Arctic policy of Sweden, where for the first time a whole section is devoted to security. And this actually is also reflected by the questions from the audience, because about half of the questions relate to security issues, and quite many actually mention China and Russia. This is something that I'm sure the Foreign Minister will illuminate us in her contribution. So without further delay, I invite the Foreign Minister Linde to take the floor. And after her remarks, we will also have questions, some of them that you have sent in before on the net, and also some that may arise spontaneously after or during her remarks. So please, Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, Arctic friends, it is a pleasure to attend this distinguished forum. COVID-19 prevents us from meeting in beautiful Iceland, but thanks to a creative solution by the Arctic Circle, the international dialogue on the Arctic continues. I would like to begin by thanking the Arctic Circle for organizing this event. A special thanks to His Excellency Össur Skarphéðinsson, who will be the moderator, and he just spoken to you. I appreciate this opportunity to present Sweden's new strategy for the Arctic region to this broad audience. The Arctic is a part of Sweden as well as a part of our neighborhood. Sweden is one of the 8 Arctic countries. Because of that, we have a special role and responsibility for development in the region. With a new Arctic strategy, we strengthen our long-term engagement in the Arctic. Sweden has a broad approach to the challenges of facing the Arctic. Our overall aim is a peaceful, stable, and sustainable development in the Arctic. Our priorities can be summarized as the people, the peace, and the climate. Our first Arctic strategy was presented in 2011. The new strategy takes into account the dramatic climate changes in the last decade and its consequences for the environment and living conditions. The strategy also reflects on the deteriorating international situation affecting developments in the Arctic. It is not a security policy strategy, but it contains a security policy dimension. In our new strategy, Sweden puts an extra emphasis on the importance of international cooperation. There is a new Arctic emerging that requires new responses. This is our contribution. Climate. The strategy reflects an increased climate and environmental commitment on the part of the government. The effects of climate change are more alarming in the Arctic than anywhere else on the globe. It is an undisputed fact that climate change, if not slowed down, will irreversibly change the Arctic as we know it. It will destroy living conditions and accelerate negative trends globally. The consequences would be devastating. In less than 2 decades from now, the Arctic Ocean could be largely free of sea ice in summertime. To counter global warming, we need to transform our economies and energy system. Emissions, the 8 Arctic states have a special responsibility to show leadership in global efforts countering climate change. The government has set a target. Sweden will be carbon-free and carbon neutral by 2045. The Swedish government is working to strengthen the global commitment to managing the effects of climate change in the Arctic. We therefore warmly welcome the message from President-elect Biden about the US rejoining the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement forms a foundation for our work and must be reflected in Arctic cooperation. This will require us all and the Arctic Council to have a special focus on protecting biodiversity and sensitive ecosystems on land and sea. The rapid climate change demonstrates the importance of a fact and science-based approach. Research in and about the Arctic is becoming more and more important for the understanding of the global effects of climate change and for adaptation. We want to see more international cooperation on polar research. Peace and stability through cooperation. Sweden is committed to working hard to ensure that the Arctic remains a region of peace and stability, and the region characterized by constructive cooperation based on respect for international law. The Arctic has for a long time been described as an area of low tension, but that is a situation that we cannot take for granted. The geostrategic situation in the Arctic is complex. A combination of increased global power competition and climate change is at play. As the ice melts, the region's natural resources become more accessible and new shipping lines open up. There is increasing international interest and presence in the Arctic. In parallel, the global security policy situation affects development in the region. The Arctic has become a region of increasing military strategic importance. Sweden sees a risk that the new military dynamic and increased military activity also increases the risk for an arms race and incidents in the Arctic. Sweden will act based on an approach with 2 main tracks. First, we will work to uphold the rule-based world order. We will work to strengthen cooperation and dialogue and for confidence-building measures in the Arctic in line with international law. Second, we view the North Atlantic, the Arctic, and the Baltic Sea as a strategic whole. We're deepening security and defense policy cooperation in our immediate area, not least with the Nordic countries. One example is the trilateral statement of intent signed in September between Norway, Finland, and Sweden. Deepened cooperation also includes hybrid threats of a non-military nature. A strong transatlantic link is vital for Sweden. Well-functioning international cooperation in the Arctic is in Sweden's interest. Cooperation builds trust and confidence, and it is needed for addressing cross-border challenges facing the region. Respect for international law is also key for ensuring peace and stability. So far, we have seen good progress in both areas. International law applies to the Arctic region. UN Convention of the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, is a central legal framework for the maritime area. I also want to highlight the Ilulissat Declaration from 2008. It reflects a commitment by Arctic states to solve any overlapping claims in the Arctic by peaceful means. That commitment and declaration was reconfirmed by all 8 Arctic states in 2018. The Arctic Council is a central forum for international cooperation in the region. It fills confidence-building role. We can look back on what soon will be 25 years of successful cooperation. The Arctic Council works because the 8 Arctic states have common interest in the Arctic remaining a low-tension area. A testament to this is the 3 international agreements negotiated by the Arctic Council. One on search and rescue, one on cooperation on marine oil spill, and one on scientific cooperation. The agreements are important in substance. They are also important as they contribute to strengthening the link between the 8 Arctic states. Sweden will work to further strengthen the Arctic Council in its role as the central forum for questions concerning the Arctic. Iceland has successfully carried out the Arctic Council chairpersonship under the very challenging circumstances in the COVID pandemic. In June next year, Russia will take over as chair of the Council. Sweden's 2-track policy regarding Russia covers the Arctic. We will continue to have a strict and principled stance on Russia's violation of international law. At the same time, we have an obvious interest in cooperating with Russia in areas of interest to us, such as climate, environment, and polar research. We will continue our well-functioning cooperation with Russia in the Arctic Circle, in the Arctic Council. This benefits developments in the Arctic, as well as our security and stability in the neighborhood. Increased cooperation with non-Arctic actors is becoming increasingly important to deal with cross-border challenges in the region. The special role of the 8 Arctic countries should be preserved. But from our side, we welcome and encourage positive engagement by all interested actors. However, we underline the need for everyone to respect international law and the established forum for cooperation. Sweden wants to see a stronger EU engagement for the Arctic. With its broad set of instruments, EU can provide real added value to the efforts by the Arctic states. Not least will EU's role as global leader on climate action be key to the future of the Arctic. EU is also an important advocate for respect for international law. Sweden strongly supports EU becoming an observer to the Arctic Council. Sustainable development. The Arctic region is not an isolated land of ice, wild nature, and harsh landscape. It is a region very much defined by the 4 million people living there. The Arctic and its people are among those most affected by climate change and by increased economic activity in the region. Sweden wants the population in the Arctic to enjoy good living conditions and sustainable economic and social development with respect for the rights of the indigenous people. The economic potential of the Arctic has increased the global interest in investing and seeking business opportunities in the region. This could benefit growth in the Arctic countries and contribute to livelihood in local communities. But increased economic activity risks at the same time to have negative impacts on the sensitive Arctic environment and for local living conditions. Sweden will work to ensure environmental, economic, and social sustainable trade and investments in the Arctic region on the basis of Agenda 2030. We will work to ensure that the increase in economic activity in the Arctic benefits local economic growth. We will also work to maintain and further develop a robust regulatory framework for free, fair, and sustainable trade. Proactive work to address technical trade barriers and to promote greater border trade are also vital for economic development in the Arctic. Sustainable economic development is key to securing prosperity for the people living in the Arctic. In this context, it is important with a strong focus on youth, the future of the Arctic. Men and women must be given equal opportunities. We must ensure possibilities for education, smart solutions, and the development of robust infrastructure, including digital infrastructure. It is important for creating attractive communities in the Arctic region. In the development of the Arctic, the rights and interests of indigenous people must be respected. Sweden will work for increased opportunities for indigenous peoples in the Arctic to preserve and develop their identity, culture, and traditional livelihoods. Thank you very much.
Well, Minister, thank you very much for a tour de force of a strategy that is very comprehensive and quite complex, and you managed to describe it really well in a matter of a very short time. And I think the audience, to reflect from the questions that we have received, should be especially grateful to you for how you did discuss in depth what has perhaps raised most interest regarding the new strategy, and that is, of course, the security component. A lot of questions have been put forth regarding that, and I think it is fair to say that our ex-president, Ólafur Ragnar Grímsson, that is also the founder of Arctic.circle, he really summed them up in a quite penetrating questions in a tweet from last week that I noticed that the Swedish Foreign Ministry retweeted. And I think it would be quite good for the discussion and to clear the air, so to speak, about Swedish intentions. If I ask you these questions here in this discussion, and we start the discussion by listening to you addressing his questions, and I will quote them. The president stated in his tweet, or asked, "Are new conflicts inevitable? Why is there a strong military section in the new Arctic strategy of Sweden? Does Sweden consider China a threat?" I think it would be very interesting to listen to your reflections on this, please.
As I said, you must speak. This is not a security policy, but there is a security dimension. And one of the most important things is that we want to keep Arctic as a low tension area. And when it comes to China, of course, China's increased global ambitions are also expressed in the Arctic, and its approach to strengthening its presence follow the pattern from other parts of the world. Since 2013, China has participated in the activities of the Arctic Council as an observer. China's central role in the climate area and in the global environmental cooperation is also important if you see it is in an Arctic context. But of course, it can lead to conflict of interest. Of course, China expresses general support for international law, but we also know that it acts selectively and concerning issues when China sees it as being their core interest. So we are encouraging governments that is like-minded in EU to cooperate and act together when it comes to challenges and opportunities, both challenges and opportunities from the increased Chinese global influence. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Minister. And I think we should now proceed to questions that have been put to you from the audience. And the first question is from Mark Lantine. How do you see Sweden further developing its Arctic cooperation with non-Arctic states?
Well, it's from Norway. Well, Sweden values and appreciate the important contribution of the observers to work with the Arctic Council. We are in general positive to inviting new observers to Arctic Council, provided, of course, that the applicant meets the criteria and can contribute to the work with the Council's working group. And I get kind of experience on the Arctic Council meeting in Umeå a year ago, when we had both the Maltese foreign minister and the vice minister from India. And I told the Indian vice minister, I'm very glad you're here, but why are you here? And then he said, well, you know, the climate changes in Arctic is directly affecting the monsoons in India, and what's happening there is also our challenges and our problems. And that's why we in India want to take part in what you are doing in the Arctic Council. And I think that's a kind of illustrative part of why also non-Arctic states and actors should be invited. So in short, we encourage non-Arctic states to engage further and contribute with their experience also to the 6 working groups that we have. Thank you.
Well, thank you. The next question, in fact, 2 questions that I will take together are from Yuo Wang, who's actually in the Netherlands. And he wants to know what is Sweden's perspective to China's polar Silk Road. And he has a follow-up question where he asks you if you have observed any unintended effects due to China's participation in the Arctic.
Thank you. Well, Chinese investments in infrastructure in other countries can have a positive effect. But of course, it needs to be transparent, economically, environmentally, socially sustainable, and in accordance with international law and international standards. And the second question about unintended effects, well, I would say it's a little bit difficult to answer that one, because what I can say is that the Swedish government is closely following the increased interest from China in the Arctic, not the least when it comes to resources extraction, investment in infrastructure and research. In the government's communication to the parliament on China last year, we also mentioned that military cooperation between China and Russia with a focus on the Arctic requires increased attention.
Well, Minister, we still have another question that is related to China. It is from Eric Boyd in England, and he wants to know how you see the increased interest of the Chinese in funding infrastructure in the Scandinavian Arctic.
Thank you. Well, there's a big interest in China. I understand it, all the questions. Well, to date, Chinese funding of infrastructure in the Scandinavian Arctic has been relatively limited. Chinese investment can help meet the global demand for infrastructure, and that is including in Scandinavia. It's important, as I just said before, that it has to be transparent, economically and environmentally and sustainable, and that is following international law and also international standards. And
Peter Windsor from Canada, he asks how your new progressive policy will be used to promote adequate responses to the Arctic climate and environmental challenges.
Well, thank you from Canada. Well, this strategy, it reflects the ambitious climate and environmental policy of the Swedish government. And this policy covers also Arctic, of course. We will take the leadership in promoting implementation of the Paris Agreement. I must say I'm very, very happy that there is an intention from the president-elect in US to rejoin the Paris Agreement. This means also that we will have an ambition approach in, for example, the negotiation with the BBNJ, which is the United Nations Intergovernmental Conference on Biodiversity of the areas beyond national jurisdiction, and the UN Convention on Biological Biodiversity. And these international agreements and conventions are absolutely fundamental for the future of the Arctic.
Then we have Ed Kaufman that wants to know if NATO should take more active role in the security of the Arctic.
Well, Sweden is not a member of NATO, so I guess that you have to ask NATO that.
Well, you perhaps have a view, Minister.
I think NATO is perfectly well placed to answer this question.
Okay, we'll ask NATO then next time. But related to this, there is a question from Russia, from Katerina Olabatskaya. Isn't the expansion of NATO's presence in the Arctic fraught with an increase in conflict potential in the region?
Well, this has to do with the global security cooperation. And as we have pointed out, it's very important for us and all the 8 Arctic states that Arctic keeps on being a low tension area, and that there will be no military escalation or conflicts. And that goes, of course, for all actors with military activities.
Well, I think we can say that the next question from Jacopo Polverino from Italy is related to the last questions. And he asks, is there a need to create a new forum to discuss and promote dialogue and cooperation on hard security?
Well, I will say that generally the Arctic region is characterized by a very well-functioning cooperation, and the format is working well. It fulfilled the confidence building role, and in the security and defense sphere, dialogue between the partners is carried out in different formats. So I don't think that there is a need for any new formats. We are also very cautious to make attempts to kind of regionalize the security, if I may put it like that. This goes also for Arctic. So I will be sensitive towards that.
Well, if we turn to the role of business, then Mats Quist Fredriksen from Denmark, he feels that the business community is playing a limited role in the Swedish strategy. And he asks, how do you see the role of business in the Arctic policy?
Yeah, our strategy in a totally wrong way, because the business play a big role, and it's said also in the strategy how important it is. My government is emphasizing in the strategy the role of the Swedish business sector. I used to be Minister of Trade, and we have a very, very good cooperation with the business. They want to be sustainable, they want sustainable trade, and they want sustainable investments in the Arctic region, and work to ensure and also increase the economic activity in the Arctic. So it's also important that the business that is doing in the Arctic is also benefiting the local economic growth. Our ambition is, of course, to be a forerunner regarding the green transition. We work very hard on this. We have very high-skilled companies that plays an important role when it comes to green transition. So through the innovation, through the environmentally friendly technology, I think that the Swedish business can reduce environmental footprint from economic activities in the Arctic, and to the transition to a circular economy.
Well, this question is really related to the next one. Which Swedish industries benefit the most from a changing Arctic environment?
Well, thank you. Actually, from our point of view, it's important that all economic activity in the Arctic is conducted in a long-term way, that they see it in a sustainable way. The challenges to the climate and to the environment calls for a green transition for the industry in general. And that means that the business has to meet the requirement of sustainability. And those who do that, they will have the most benefits. And I can take two good examples that I know of companies that are focusing on sustainability. For example, Alfa Laval, they are producing technical solutions for reduced emissions from shipping. And also Hybrid, which is extremely, it's so exciting. They are developing a solution for the international steel industry. And they will make steel production without CO2 emissions possible. And I guess all Swedish politicians has been there watching this because it's really, really exciting. So we must not forget that the changing Arctic environment and the increased economic activity also poses a risk to have negative impacts, not the least for many traditional businesses. For example, reindeer husbandry is facing challenges that must be dealt with to ensure its survival. Well-functioned and long-term sustainable reindeer husbandry require access to sustainable calving grounds, functioning migration routes for the reindeer with resting pastures and central connected seasonal grazing areas for each season, and that should not be destroyed by economic activities.
Nicola Stracco from Italy, he wants to know your views on whether Sweden should act independently or if it does require the support of EU when facing global powers in the Arctic.
Well, to state obvious, we make our own choices. Sweden makes our own choices. We are an Arctic state and we are members of the Arctic Council in our own right. But having said that, when it comes to EU, we welcome and we encourage a strong EU role in the Arctic. And we are, as I said before, we are very much positive to EU being an observer in the Arctic Council. Because EU has a broad toolbox, it could contribute with to get the stable and sustainable Arctic region, and not the least EU's leadership when it comes to climate issues is very important for the Arctic. So the Arctic Council is much more a forum for cooperation than facing other powers.
Well, Minister, thank you very much for your answers. I will ask you, because I'm very familiar with the strategy you had from 2011, and there you actually were in front of the Arctic states and putting a great emphasis on the role and increased role of the Arctic Council. And I notice, of course, from your new strategy that we've been discussing, that you put an even stronger role on stronger emphasis on the future role of the Arctic Councils. And could you just very briefly give us in concrete terms how you would like to see the role of the Arctic Council be more sharper?
Well, I'm quite satisfied with the role of the Arctic Council. I always in my speeches take the Arctic Council as a very good example on good cooperation, on concrete actions. We're having those international agreement that has been negotiated by the 8 Arctic member states We have the working groups with different concrete areas. We can develop the issues when it comes, for example, to polar research. So I think it's rather good to continue in the way that the Arctic Council has been working now for many years. And I really think it's a positive step that not only Sweden, but several other countries are in the process of doing new Arctic strategies. And like we are doing, we put a security dimension into it, which we didn't have before. And I see that many of the other countries that are working and soon finishing their Arctic strategies will also put new dimensions, getting the possibility for the Arctic Council to be even broader. But all in all, I think the Arctic Council is a good example of regional cooperation in the world.
Well, Minister, you have been most generous with your thoughts and with your time. You've actually been quite explicit and frank in your answers. So I would like to thank you very much on behalf of us here in Reykjavik and also on behalf of our distinguished audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Well, distinguished audience, before we say goodbye, the Arctic Circle would like to draw your attention to the next virtual event. Next week, the winners of the Arctic Future Challenge Awards will be announced through this platform. These awards recognize youth entrepreneurs and projects in the Arctic, and it was actually made possible by close collaboration of the governments of Denmark, Greenland, Faroe Islands, and Iceland. And these awards will be presented by ministers from these governments. A panel with the winners will then follow the award show. So I would like just to finish, like to thank you very much for your questions that you put to the minister, and stay well, stay happy, and of course, stay tuned to Arctic Circle Virtual. Goodbye from Reykjavik.